Thank you. So most of the questions, I think, were to Professor Vyas and to Mr. Chandrasekhar, a question to Mr. Rajapakse. May I request Professor Vyas to please respond? We have a total of about 12 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'll take three questions. There are many interesting questions and comments. One is the role of PDS in enhancing nutrition. I think PDS can be used for enhancing nutrition if we can bring in some of the nutritious food which we have totally ignored. We are concentrating all the time on wheat and rice. But if we can bring in the coarse cereals, the cereals which are consumed in the region and distribute them through public distribution system, I think we can do a lot. But the implication of that we should understand. Implication is that then the procurement of these crops as well as distribution will have to be decentralized. If we can bring in states to take up procurement and distribution, we can really strengthen PDS. PDS shown over a period of time some signs of improvement. We are all dissatisfied with whatever is happening, but there is also in unexpected places some improvement, like in Chhattisgarh recent years. Second is on the traditional agriculture. Now, world over, at least in the developing countries and more so in India, it is coming out very clearly that the way the input costs are going up, especially cost based on chemicals and on oil, etc., there is no way we will be able to make a profitable agriculture, which will also meet the requirement of poor people who are non-agriculturist or food consumers. Therefore, there is a low input, but not necessarily low output. Agriculture is now something on which scientists are working. And good thing is, this is the good news, that this is happening on a large scale, not only experimental. One of the illustrations, there can be many, is SRI, the systematic rice intensification. With lesser input cost, less use of water, you get much more of production. There are such things which are happening all over in all the crops in all the regions. We have to scale them up, and the trick is how do we do it. Third is about the action plan. Now, I do not take the responsibility of any action. An advisor in that way is very enviable position, like our worthy chairman was to execute things, that we can advise and leave the results to the policymakers or the powers that be. But yes, we are progressing, and I'm optimist about even on nutrition front. We are progressing step by step. We should have speeded up this progress, but going on. Hunger is eliminated, which is a good news. The starvation is now a thing of past, excepting seasonal starvation in the rain-fed areas. This is a good thing. Calorie intake is improving. Still, it is less in some area. Nutrition-wise, we have got 3 or 4 major programs, and our main difficulty, and I'm writing this in the review, I'm not giving any secret, that review which the council does for the Prime Minister every 6 months, that our lacuna is not so much the policy or the investment, terms of trade. All these are by and large satisfactory. We can improve upon, but they are all right and going in right direction. Our lacuna is in delivery systems. If we can strengthen our delivery system, then the type of programs that we have got, ICDS, midday meal, and now soon hopefully food security, we should be able to deliver a nutritionally, not only food security, but nutritional enhancement and food security. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Thank you, sir. May I? There was one question on PDS leakages. Yes, studies have suggested that between 25 and 30% of supplies under the public distribution system get leaked into the open market. My point is very simple. While we need to plug these leakages, there is no doubt that we need to plug these leakages. We cannot abandon a welfare program because there are leakages. I would say that at least 70% of the poor people are able to access food. while 30% of the grain leaks out. 70% of the food grains under PDS actually reaches the poor people. And we should actually be happy that 70% is reaching, although our attempt should be to ensure that 100% of the food under PDS actually reaches. Therefore, I think it would be rather, I would think even it's unethical to suggest that we abandon or disband the public distribution system. We need to strengthen the public distribution system, ensure that the right kind of the target consumers actually receive not only rice, wheat and sugar, but as I recommended, edible oils and pulses, which would give calories and protein. That's the first point. Second point is on regulation of the input market. I did not advisedly use the word prices. I talked about regulation of the input market very simply because you have spurious seeds across the country. You have spurious agrochemicals across the country. Farmers don't know whether the seeds are good. Farmers don't know whether the agrochemical is of the right quality. Farmers do not know how to use fertilizers. Believe me. And therefore, I use the word regulation in the sense of monitoring. We need monitoring of the input market in terms of quality and advice to farmers about how to use these inputs, and not a price control. I have, in fact, if you go into the archives of my paper, you will find articles arguing against any price control. For example, the Andhra Pradesh state government, which imposed controls on BT cotton, I wrote against it. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Rajapaksa.
Yes, there are two questions. One is directed towards the panel regarding indigenous vegetables and fruits. In fact, I mentioned in my presentation that Sri Lankan government for the last 3 years had a very vigorous program in countrywide called Let Us Cultivate and Uplift the Nation. There the target is actually to encourage and develop indigenous fruits and vegetables. However, if you look at Sri Lanka, if you look at any Sri Lankan cities, you may find majority of the cities are filled with imported apples, oranges and grapes. So, but Sri Lanka is a home for 32 varieties of banana, so many varieties of pineapples, so many improved varieties of mangoes, but still we are importing so much of imported fruits. That's a matter of policy. Due to trade agreements, of course, we know that it's not possible for us to ban or to restrict the imports, but however, we are in the program to encourage to develop our local, our own indigenous fruits and vegetables. So that's the program that is enveloping the entire Sri Lanka now. To the question raised by you, yes, we have to learn a lot from our giant neighbor India, because India has a correct agricultural policy. That's the reason that they have been able to feed almost 1 billion people and export their surplus to countries in the region. The correct agriculture policy means that India has encouraged a lot of their university graduates to do their local PhDs, which we don't find it countries like in our country. And for last 2 or 3 years, we have been encouraging our students also to get registered in their local universities to do their PhDs, to encourage, they identify the problems and they will come out with the problems in situ. Perhaps this is something that we have to learn from our giant neighbor, and there are some lessons that we have learned from some other countries as well. So we'll incorporate all these ideas and make that our Sri Lanka will become self-sufficient in fruits and vegetables and rice.
I will just respond one of the questions raised by my Nepali colleague. Actually, we should develop a culture of collaboration. As you have been mentioning, you have mentioned about the traditional agriculture practice. You know that GNSP project was just become successful because of the multi-sectoral approach, and that time agriculture sector was actively involved. But since a couple of years, agriculture sector is working isolated. So I really encourage to involve agricultural sector in nutrition program, not being, you don't need to work isolated, and if you will be a part of the health nutrition, then definitely you will get more avenues. Thank you.
Dali, would you like to make any comments? Thank you very much. I thought we had a very interesting, lively, and rich discussion. Particularly, I think, on a topic of great significance to South Asia. South Asia is, as we know, highly vulnerable also to high food prices. We have seen food prices soaring back again. 2008 is not very far away from our memory. It really rang alarm bells across the world, and there was indeed a food crisis which had abated, but clearly food prices are rising all over South Asia, and food inflation is indeed very high. The outlook to me, with it seems, with the kind of highly accommodative monetary policy in the industrialized world, or rather the aftermath of such an accommodative policy, which keeps the dollar, the US dollar weak, and we know that commodity prices are largely dollar denominated. It seems to me that the commodity prices could continue to rise, which is a sobering thought for South Asia, for the reasons that we heard, and we hope that policy makers are closely watching the global food prices, and that they are going to be very proactive in taking measures, actions, putting in place mechanisms which will stave off another major crisis in the region. With those words, I would like to thank the panelists very much for their presentations, and to those who asked questions for making the debate lively, and to all of you who came here today to listen and participate in this session. Thank you very much.